probably you'll be asking, so how does this make sense? How do you make use of this tool? So let's quickly take a quick look at a demo of how you can work with this tool, and then probably by that time we're going to talk about a couple of things as well. So I'm just going to click here and create a new scene. So with my new scene here, I'm going to click and open up or import an FBX. This is a good thing to know because Akitsu doesn't work with other files. Akitsu basically works with FBX. And so if you look at this, we now have this FBX object that's been imported. And let's just take a quick look at it. And there you can see that it has a very nice geometry. So we're going to do a little bit of comparison between how you work here and how you work in apps like Maya. And before we do that, let's actually get this character rigged. Rigging a character in Akitsu is extremely easy. It is very quick, and then you don't spend so much time. I mean, the times you can spend in other apps, you don't spend so much time like that while rigging a character. So I'm going to start off by simply just going all the way to rig this character. If you have a model that is not properly placed, let's say your model is here and you need to position the model to the center, you can position the model to the center and then freeze transform. Always freeze your transformations before you start rigging. It is extremely important you freeze the transforms of your object and make sure that they are within the 0, X, Y, and Z axis at the point at which you want to start rigging. So we're going to start out by creating a new character space or a new character, and by simply clicking on this button here, you can have a new character, and we can just call this character man. And the next thing which we're going to do is to take this character or the mesh and put it directly under the tree here, just to parent this directly underneath this. You don't need a special button. All you need is a left click to just click and drag and drop it directly under there. For us to start rigging this character, making sure that we have man or we have the character created, next thing which we need to do is we need to be within the build pose, and within the build pose, what we can do now is just simply take a very good look at our object and start building or start rigging. So I'm going to simply just stay here, and or maybe I can just turn on the wireframe so I can see what I'm doing. Next thing, I'm going to come to the skeleton and click to start adding joints. And if I just simply click, I can create a joint there, a joint here, a joint here, another one here, something going on here. Let's say we can just put one here, put another joint here, put another joint here, and finally we can have one joint within that space. At any point in time, if you want to jump from selecting a joint to selecting something, you don't, let's say you want to just simply jump back to selecting any of your transform objects, simply press A on your keyboard and you can jump out of that mode. And it's very interesting to note that Akitsu calculates the center of your object, something that is very similar with working in Maya. It calculates the center of your object and then drops the joint directly in the center. If we take a good look at Maya, for example, you would notice that when we want to start creating a joint, so if you go over to rigging, come over to skeleton and click on creating joint, you need to make sure that snap to center is active, and if snap to center is or project to center is active, you can still do exactly the same thing. So the same thing which you can do in Akitsu, you can find out that we can actually do the very same thing here in Maya. This is just a quick tip so you can understand if you're trying to move away from the entire Autodesk thingy, or let's say you're trying to find the familiarity between working in Maya and working in Akitsu. This is how you can get that working. And now, so once this is done, the next thing which we want to do is to create joints for the legs. So we're going to simply do that now by simply just positioning this, I think somewhere around there. So this is supposed to be our main hip, and I'm going to press J on my keyboard to activate this, or just simply click here, and I need this tree to go all the way down to this point. So I'm just going to put one here, and let's put one there and see what we can create. Okay, so with these done, let's actually position this properly. Nice. So with this done, the next thing which you would probably be thinking about is how can you mirror the entire thing from here to the other part. So for me to mirror this particular joint, I need to make sure I have a complete selection of the joint which I want. Then the next thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to simply right click and duplicate, or you can do that directly from here. So if you select these here, and let's just go all the way to this part where we have all of this joint. So if I select this right now and I want to select all of the objects that exist, I can spread this out and hold Control and select them individually, or I can right click and just select the hierarchy. So if I'm done selecting the hierarchy, the next thing which I would like to do is I would like to just right click and say duplicate hierarchy. And with the duplicate hierarchy done, the next thing which I will do is just come over to transform and mirror this transform. So let's go ahead and select all of the hierarchy and then just mirror this transform. And this is basically how you can go ahead and work with mirroring your objects directly in Akitsu. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to go ahead and select the entire hierarchy, right click and duplicate the hierarchy. Next thing which I'm going to do is select the hierarchy one more time and mirror this hierarchy here. Now let's go ahead and skin this object. So since we're finished up with this, which is definitely the building of the pose or building of the rig, next thing which we want to do is to simply skin this object. So to skin this object, I'm going to simply click here, right click and select all. Now I'm selecting every single thing here. Actually, I think I need to select the entire hierarchy. So select hierarchy, then hold down Control. I think I should just do this one more time. Select this, select the entire hierarchy. All right, then hold down Control, select the character, go over to skin and check. Now I'm going to talk to you guys about how you can skin your object here in Akitsu. In Akitsu, for you to be able to skin your object, you need to understand that Akitsu makes use of a dual skinning method. Maya actually has about 3 or 4 different types of skinning method, but here it has one solid skinning method that you can make use of. Now the dual skinning method is something that you can actually access when you have all of this selected. You'll be able to see that the skin atelier, okay, gets active. And the first things you need to do is to click here so that you can process this for the very first pass. Then the second pass gets to do with you processing this so that it becomes smooth. And finally, if you want to be able to see this particular skin and where they are all displayed, you can simply click here, and there you're going to be able to have that object skinned. Now our object has been skinned and we are going to go ahead and test it out. As easy as it is, this is how you can simply skin your object directly here in Akitsu. So you don't need to know so many maths or things like that. You just need to just simply click 1, 2 and boom, 3, you have your object skinned. So once your object is skinned, you can select any part of this mesh that has a bone associated with it, and there you'll be able to go ahead and rotate this mesh how you want it to be. So you can rotate your mesh like this, you can rotate your mesh however you want, and this is about it. Then this is how you can simply rig your object directly in Akitsu. So I'm just going to have this selection here and go ahead and rotate this particular object. So within the skin and check, you will be able to paint your weight. You'll also be able to check for deformations just in case. So let me just quickly go ahead and do this real quick. So let's say I want to move this arm, and now you can find out that we have some weights around here. Okay, so now I have this selected. Let's look at this and also see what we can get. Okay, so we have this happening here. Let me select this. Okay, so we have this happening here. I'm just going to select this joint now. All right, so I'm selecting this joint now, this particular joint. And with this joint selected, I'm going to press A to just add up all of these parts because this is where I want these things to be. For these other ones, let's say you want to minus them or you want to subtract them from where they are. Let's say you don't want them to exist in that space. If you simply have this selected, you can use your right mouse button to actually paint your weight out. And if you want to smooth this, there is no shortcut key for that. You just need to actually come through and have this selected, and then you can go ahead and paint this in and smooth this out. Contrary to apps like Maya and other apps where you need to hold down Shift and smooth out your entire thingy, you don't get to do that here. So I'm also going to just simply select A and use the right mouse button to paint all of these things out. So despite that, you can see that Akitsu has actually done a fairly good job, which would require little or no effort for you to, go ahead and start painting all of these things. So basically, you can just simply have this to yourself and, get all the skin painting that you would like to have. Now, let's talk about the rotation. So if within this part now, I would like to rotate to just simply test, and you would notice that right out of the bat, I am getting this deformation happening like this. So I'm going to explain this rotation to you real quick. So now you can see that as I'm rotating this object, right, you're noticing that the rotation is behaving kind of awkward. It's because within the rotation, they have two types of rotation when you're working in Akitsu. The first type has to do with inherit of children, and once you right click, you will be able to rotate every single thing that exists within that hierarchy. So now we've just right clicked, you will notice that I'm having this, and if we right click one more time, I'll be having a rotation that would just happen within the particular object itself. So for this, we're going to just simply right click to have this there so that we can test out this entire thing. So I'm just going to rotate now so you can see that, and you can definitely use this to actually change or rotate your object. Now if you're having Akitsu and you're not being able to do all of this rotation, let's say at any time you want to rotate its changes, there is a preference tab that you can work with. And by the way, preference exists almost everywhere in Akitsu. So there's a preference tab here, there's a preference here, there's a preference here, there's a preference. There's basically preferences everywhere. So what you get to do is select the preference that exists within the spinner. So if I select this preference here, and if yours is checked as this, that simply means that every single time you select something different and you go over to the viewport, it definitely changes. So if I select something like the rotate and go over to the viewport, you notice it changes. All right. But if you turn this off, it simply gets to do that. It simply gets to deal with the rotation that now you can definitely just come through and rotate directly on your viewport. And I understand why this occurs, and I understand why this is actually necessary, because if we still consider an app like Maya, for example, so let's say you want to animate, most of the times you get to notice that animators make use of this global rotation to actually rotate, which is not the best. So if you want to go ahead and animate, I would suggest that you hold down Ctrl and Shift and select gimbal. Now within the gimbal, you will be able to just have access to the main axis, which is your X, Y, and Z, contrary to having this global thingy here, which would end up screwing up your animation. And you will take a peek here that if I start changing this, you notice that all of these values are changing, but if I'm within the gimbal, I can only change one parameter at a given time. So this is extremely important. And so this is the reason why I think the guys here at Nukagera, the guys that created Akitsu, came up with this idea. So you only rotate a particular axis at a given time, right? So that you don't get to rotate within this particular space, but then you can just rotate a particular axis at a given time. So real quick, we can talk about other things. So let's talk about your IK and your FK. So how do you deal with IK and FK? In Maya, for you to deal with IK and FK, you might have known by now that you need to actually create another adjacent bone here and then create another adjacent bone. So these joints would actually act as the switch, which gets to switch between this and this. So here could be your IK and here could be your FK. This is something that's very prominent in Maya, right? Maybe in other apps as well, this is how it works. But in Akitsu, that doesn't work this way. You can just select 1 and 2. So I can have these two joints within my bind pose, and I can automatically make this my IK. And this is your IK, and this is how good it gets. So with this now, I can go over to the skinning, right? With this selected, and I can control my character's arm by using the IK. And at any point in time, I can simply select any other part and choose to rotate just using the FK. So the FK can just kick in at any point, and the IK can still exist. So there is you don't need to get the whole IK FK switch blending thingy. It happens directly here, and it happens on the fly. The same thing you can do with the IK is obviously the very same thing you can do with reverse foot. So now we've just seen how we can go ahead and create an IK. So I think we should just really create another one here. So we can have these two joints selected and, you know, do this. And if I want my pole vector, by default your pole vector exists here, right? By default your pole vector exists there. So next thing which you want to look at is how can you create a reverse foot. You know, if you want to create a reverse foot using apps like Maya, you need to go ahead and, you know, create different IKs, then, you know, go ahead and just simply play around to get this working for you. But for you to create that here, you need to select the joint you want the thing to be. Make sure you're within the bind pose. It is extremely important. So I'm just going to keep that there and click here to create your reverse foot. I'm also going to create another reverse foot here. And this is basically how you create reverse foot using Akitsu. So now you've created the reverse foot. One more thing you'll be wondering how this works is how can you manipulate the reverse foot? So if I select the skin and check, you would notice now that, actually let's just do this from here. You'll notice within my rotation, I don't have anything selected around here, right? Okay, but here I now have 3 different icons. Now these 3 different icons gets to do with the different things that you can do with a reverse foot. So you can twist the reverse foot, you can peel it up and down, and then you can also do this. So you can see quite easy, you have created a reverse foot control. So you don't necessarily need to, you know, go ahead and start calculating so much things, and your IK automatically works real quick with this. The same thing happens for this other one. You can just use this and create your IK real quick. I think this gets to do with your joint orientation, so you need to make sure you check your joint orientations properly. This is a quick one, so that's why we're having that stutter there. Now another thing you need to also pay attention to is if you have this selected, so this is our IK joint, and we can see we'll have our IK happening here. If you're working in Maya, when you create an IK, you need to create a pole vector, right? So the pole vector controls this part. But then how this works here is quite different. If you have this part selected and you go over to the rotation, you can change where your pole vector would be. So this is responsible for the pole vector. So now let's go ahead and simply position this how we want it to be. I'm just going to do this real quick and that. Right. Now, if you've screwed up with your mesh, let's say you've screwed up with the entire pose and you're no longer comfortable with it, and you want to now start doing your original animation, you've checked out these things and they are looking fine and wonderful for you, you can hit this button here to reset the entire pose. Alright, you can hit that button there to reset the entire pose. You can use this button to copy the pose from a certain part. You can also use this button to actually mirror a pose from one part to another. And this is how simple it is for you to, you know, start animating your object. Now for any part of the object you want to work with, you can just select that part and rotate that part directly. You don't need to have controllers that would do this for you. You can just simply do this real quick. And let's say you want your character to bend, and also make sure you paint your skin weight right. So we didn't do a good job with this. So also make sure you have your skin weight painted properly. And other things we can do is we can just have these objects selected, you know, and the quick way is holding I, O, and P to jump between your selections, so we can have this and position this hand wherever we want to position the hand to, and directly switch. Okay, so we can switch to I to FK real quick, and, you know, do a bit of a rotation. We can also switch back and do a quick rotation here. So you see we can just access the FK and the IK real quick without having any FK or IK set up. So let's say you have this joint here and you want to pin it. So what you can do is just simply right click on that particular object. So let me just have this object selected and right click, and once it turns red, you've just pinned that point. So pinning that point simply means now that you can go ahead and move this and your object will be locked within that particular space. For you to animate your object, you need to have this selected. So we're back into this pose. We're going to click here to switch to the animation. You need to click here to bring out a new animation bank or new animation layer where you want to do your animation. And then the next thing which you need to do is make sure that you have a frame. So you animate based on the frame. So here we have one keyframe. You can use this to increase and reduce your animation time. So let's say you want to have something that has to do with, let's say 24. So you can stretch this all the way up and get to 24. So we have 24 frames here. And now to start off with your initial animation, you can start off by just having this head selected. I'm just going to switch here and rotate this head to this point. So we have a key here. Next, I'm going to go over to frame 12. And within frame 12, I need to add another key, all right? So you need to add another key so you can be able to animate these other parts. So you can do that like this as well. So you have another key and you can take this to 24 and add the key as well and key this particular part. I would really love it if it is possible for you to simply have auto key turned on, something that is actually prominent with an app like Maya and Blender. So if you can have auto key turned on, I think it's also possible in Cinema 4D and 3D Studio Max. Yes, it is extremely possible. So if we can have auto key turned on, it will be really cool, you know, to have auto key turned on in an app like this. But despite this, I think this is basically every single thing you would want to know. And once you're done, you can simply click here and go ahead and export this to both Sketchfab or as an FBX file to any app of your choice. So real quick, if you don't know how to create a joint setup like this, and let's say you want to use this for games and other things alike, you can just simply come over to this part where we have this joint. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this joint. Next thing you will probably want to do is be within the build pose, come here, and if you want to export to something like Unity or Unreal, you need to select the one that you want and click on this button. So automatically, by just clicking on the button, you can notice that by default we have a joint that is being set up for us. So you can go ahead and grab all of these selections by simply doing what we did earlier. So let me just go ahead and find this here. I think this should exist under here, right? So I can grab all of the selections, say select all the hierarchy, and then just simply mirror it. So the mirror works only when you're working with the predefined ones here. But if you're working without the predefined ones, then you have to do the old way, which we did earlier. So that is definitely how it works. For something like this, you've seen what we did earlier. So you can just simply select the entire hierarchy and mirror this to this other side. And this is how you can get it to work. Now, the good side of this particular mode is that you don't need to set this thing up yourself. But the downside to it is, what if you don't have, or what if you're trying to rig a quadruped? So then you have to go ahead and make the joints by yourself. And this is the things that actually exist here. So in my rating, I'm going to say Akitsu is an amazing program you can use for creating rigs and also for animating your characters. It is quick, it is fast, it is something you should go ahead and try. But then there are certain things that I will really wish that it has that it doesn't meet up with. Several things like the auto key is not available there. The ghosting is fine. I would still really love it if we can have something like a motion trail, contrary to what we have here, where when you get to select this. So we don't necessarily see what is happening when, you know, which joint is having what effect at any point in time. We're only seeing this within the X, Y, and Z that is within the frame. It would be really nice if you can get something like a motion trail, something you can see within the Cascader and something you can see in both Motion Builder and in Maya. Those things would really be amazing, so you can, you know, get a very good feedback with it. Another thing I think is if they can go ahead and integrate something like a quadruped rig, something that would be nice. And maybe also if they can also go ahead and integrate something that has to do with, once you have a mesh selected and you go ahead and select or click on the button, then it's going to just approximate this mesh and fix in the joints directly there. Something that Maya is really good at doing. It would make a lot of sense. I like the approach towards the animation and the rigging, but then it falls off a little bit with several things. The gizmo is amazing, but I would still wish that the gizmo doesn't suck a little bit like this. Maybe if the handles can be a bit wider. Say you want to select something, because most times I want to make a selection and I keep just doing things like this. I really wish that maybe they have something that covers that part as well. I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. This is a tool I would really give a yes to for you to go ahead and try. But then I would like to see some of these things that we've just talked about, see them maybe implemented in a much more newer version. Another thing I think that they should implement is I should be able to select one part of the joint and maybe find a place to check hierarchy or uncheck hierarchy, which might select the entire hierarchy. Going through this part selecting one by one is a huge pain, and it's definitely something that is a problem with every software. I think they should be able to, you know, go ahead and fix that. I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section. Have you tried this tool before? Have you used this tool? You should go ahead and try this tool. And in case you want to learn, they have a couple of tutorials here that goes through the very basic stuff that you can do with Akitsu, most of them which we've covered. And if you want to buy this tool goes for $40, which is amazing if you're a student, or let's say you just want to use it as a freelancer, not something so much for commercial use. Then if you want to use it for proper commercial use and you're making about this kind of amount a year, then you should be paying about $180. This doesn't have to do with subscription, by the way, which makes it amazingly nice for you to have a copy of this tool before they jump into that subscription boat. And then if you like this video, simply give it a like and don't forget to share with your friends. And if you're new here, it would be awesome if you can hit that subscribe button and also turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know once we release a new video. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial, review, updates, tips and tricks, free Friday, things like this. Peace.